peace, gratitude, and highest heart love. Thank you for being here for the YouTube live reading of The Healing Power of Water by Dr. Masaru Emoto. I'm your moderator and narrator, Uriel NEVEU. And we pick up at the beginning of chapter 3, page 77. Thank you. Welcome all to this corner of YouTube where we read books and learn. So, chapter 3, Water, its clinical and scientific depths, by Cyril W. Smith. Summary. Coming from a background in radar and physics, and while working on electromagnetic effects in enzymes and living systems, I became involved in the diagnosis and therapy of patients hypersensitive to their electromagnetic environment. This led to research on the physics of water, its memory for frequencies, and the use of dowsing as a scientific instrument. The results led to a basis for homeopathy and acupuncture. Frequency was the relevant parameter throughout. Acupuncture meridians have characteristic frequencies naturally present on them, where there's a connection to the autonomic nervous system, the ANS. Additional frequencies characteristic of the ANS appear. The presence of these frequencies in the whole body field of a person indicates which systems are under stress. A study of techniques for writing, reading, and erasing frequencies in water gave results of practical value. Logic gate operations with frequency were shown to be possible in spatial arrangements of water and sensitive enough for nerve impulse trains to control biocomputing. Theoretical work cited predicts domains of phase coherence as a normal property of water. Measurements involving these suggest that the Emoto ice crystal patterns may start on coherence domains and indicate frequency patterns within. Welcome, highest heart love. Thank you so much for being here. Introduction. Top of page 78. Since 1973, I've been involved in experimental research on the interactions of electromagnetic fields with biomaterials and living systems. This included my cooperation with the late Professor Herbert Frolick, FRS, a theoretical physicist at Liverpool University whose centenary was celebrated recently. One early conclusion from this work was that there were unusual magnetic field effects in water and in living biological systems, and that these were only explicable in terms of 20th century physics, not in 19th century physics. These effects involved highly complex systems that could become interconnected through sharing frequencies that had become synchronized in phase, that is, become coherent. This could happen over distances that might span many molecules, but as we were dealing with quantum systems, distance might be an irrelevance. Hypersensitive patients. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Highest heart love. Thank you so much. My involvement in the diagnosis and therapy of patients hypersensitive to their electromagnetic environment began in 1982 at the request of Dr. Jean Monroe in London. Working with her electrically hypersensitive patients and those of Dr. W.J. Rhea in Dallas, Texas, gave me an insight into the extremes of sensitivity and speeds of reaction of hypersensitive patients whose regulatory systems had failed, particularly when they were exposed to electromagnetic fields and frequencies. Such patients have a long history of ongoing hypersensitivities, and to many chemicals and or foods and particulates. They may react within seconds to something in their surroundings to which they happen to be hypersensitive. This includes their electromagnetic environment. And here, frequency is the important factor. Any frequency, from circadian rhythms to light, may be clinically significant. Very key right there. One important result from this clinical work was finding that the effects on patients of environmental electromagnetic fields, chemicals, or homeopathic potencies could be reproduced with frequency imprinted water. For example, water in flame sealed glass apples was imprinted with frequencies through the glass with no possibility of any chemical contamination. Patients reacted to this even if the water was frozen. This showed us that the basis of homeopathy must be frequencies in water. See that? That's why we write on our water very high vibrational things. Then we ingest that, and that crystallizes into our body, you see, and that becomes a part of our bioelectrical field because we all have that electromagnetic field that's emanating from our heartbeat and extending out into our aura. This is so very key because we've measured it. And so this what this book shows. Awesome, awesome. The frequencies that affect these patients are often those that occur naturally on the acupuncture meridians. These are rather like microwave links running through the body, originating as coherence between adjacent cells in the embryo. Enough water remains in a specimen of a tissue, even after staining and fixing as a microscope slide for frequency measurements to be made, and these correlate well with the natural frequencies found on the acupuncture meridians and chakras, regarded by traditional Chinese medicine as connecting to these organs: liver, lungs, large intestine, stomach, spleen. See, we already know this. We know this. Chemicals, except 100% halogen saturated ones, have a characteristic frequency signature resulting from their interaction with traces of hydrogen bonded water. Theoretical. Preparata and Del Gaudi's at the University of Milan did a theoretical investigation of the properties of coherence in condensed matter, which is anything that's not a gas. Their model for water is the same as for all the other coherent condensed matter systems. Namely, there are two parts: one incoherent, comprising water molecules oscillating at random, as in steam, mhm, but more densely packed, and the other coherent, consisting of domains of coherence, within which all the water molecules oscillate synchronously in phase with the frequency of a very large electromagnetic field that develops spontaneously within the domain. This resembles what happens in the laser, but it doesn't need any energy pumping. Predictions from their theory are in good agreement with the experimentally determined values for physical constants of liquid water. Thank you so much. Yes, we are the real deals. That's why we do this work. You're not guessing, so you know, right? So we've seen it play out. That's why you see the animals are attracted to me naturally, and so on and so forth. That's because my electromagnetic field. That's why we write love on our water, right? In harmony and various high vibrational words. See, because when you're putting out that energy, that's coming from a very special place inside. That's the highest level, highest heart love. The classical electromagnetic field is the basis of electronics and radio. It describes oscillations whose phase is well defined, coherent, but for which the number of particles, quanta, photons, carrying the energy is undefined. A quantum field has uncertainty in both its phase and the number of particles involved. And this uncertainty is determined by the Heisenberg relation. The more the uncertainty is taken up by fluctuation in the number of particles, the more perfect the phase coherence becomes. For any wave, its velocity of propagation equals its frequency multiplied by its wavelength. Within a coherent system such as water, the range of coherence length, becomes the constant quantity instead of the velocity. This makes the frequency proportional to velocity apparently without restriction, so long as one remains within the coherence length. Such a system can support many velocities, even greater than the velocity of light, with frequencies in proportion, and because these no longer have absolute values, the system has become fractal. The same patterns and effects can occur in many different parts of the electromagnetic spectrum. It's this that connects frequencies, characteristics of chemical, technical, and biological systems together. If there weren't a duality between the chemical bond and frequencies, spectroscopic analysis would be impossible. This is why a pattern of frequencies can mimic a chemical exposure for hypersensitive patients and trigger their reactions. Imprinting, reading, and erasing were down at the bottom of page 80. Clinically significant information can be imprinted into of a vial of water by succussion, which is sharply banging it on a surface. This is what creates a homeopathic potency. Frequency information from a patient's body can be collected similarly, and this often reveals stress on acupuncture meridians. Imprinting. Imprinting can occur through the glass of a vial containing water by immersing it in frequency imprinted water. Otherwise, water placed near a source of frequencies, an oscillator and coil, or a chemical or a potency can be imprinted by a strong magnet or a toroid, a ring of a ferrite material. A sequence of 7 voltage pulses will also make an imprint. A mobile phone may do this on dial up. Reading. William Tiller has described his work with memory chips imprinted by healers. Although healing can be imprinted, it is also possible to imprint stress. We see this a lot. When I visited the laboratory of Jacques Benavista shortly after the Nature Inquisition had left, I was able to find by dousing all the glassware in a box on the top shelf of the store, the bench, and the incubator that had been used through the stress left behind. It is easy for a person who has the capability of a healer and knows how to do so to affect sensitive living systems, such as those Benavista was using. I told him to trash everything or treat it as if contaminated with radioactivity in order to get his laboratory clean again. I've shown that the basic arithmetic, uh, uh, arithmetical operations can be performed on frequencies imprinted into water, and that the basic reversible logic gates and their operations can be implemented. Nerve impulses should be able to control computing operations in living systems, making biocomputing a possibility. Erasing. A water imprint is erased by briefly shielding it from the Earth's geomagnetic field, such as placing it inside of a steel box. Heating imprinted water alters the imprint, which may become hidden. It can be recovered by the application of certain frequencies, which include those of the heart acupuncture meridian and chakra, when we know that's from that 11 to 1 p.m. 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. is the heart meridian is highest. And so we can track it. We know this stuff. So I'm just giving you back out the information that's already in your DNA. Highest heart lung can be recovered by the application of certain frequencies, which include those of the heart acupuncture meridian and chakra. The heart meridian frequency is on the Schumann band, a geophysical resonance in the upper atmosphere under which life evolved. Another such frequency is the microwave resonance of molecular hydrogen. Medications can be made acceptable to sensitive patients by canceling their chemical signatures. Water's frequency memory. We're at the middle of page 82. Frequencies in water and living systems present a very great measurement problem. Clinically, they may be anywhere in the electromagnetic spectrum. These aren't frequencies of classical electric or magnetic fields, but rather frequencies of quantum fields, which must be converted to the former for measurement with instruments. Information is carried as the frequency of the A field component, which was originally a mathematical necessity arising from the fact that a magnetic field was found in closed loops. Eventually, it was shown theoretically by Aronoff and Bohm, and later experimentally, that this component of the magnetic field, called the magnetic vector potential, did exactly actually exist and could produce interference effects. Dowsing. To measure frequencies in water, I had to develop the dowsing techniques I'd initially devised for the diagnosis of reaction in very hypersensitive patients, persons incompatible with technology, period. This was the only technique able to cover the frequency range and sensitivity required. I later extended it to the detection of resonances in water, allergen dilutions, and homeopathic potencies. I've detected the frequency signature of salt, sodium chloride, to a concentration of about 0.03 ppm by weight in water. Parts per million is ppm. By my dowsing, measurements agree with instrumentation where this has been possible. Their internal consistency is good. Mind body interactions make double blinding difficult, if not impossible. The dowsing reaction must involve the heart or pericardium acupuncture meridians. If either is joined to a wire, all dowsing response is lost. A magnetic A field reverses the dowsing response as it does for the a- uh, Aharonov Bohm effect. Since a frequency can be measured in less than the time for a single cycle, its measurement must involve a phase comparison between the left and right arms. See also Chapter 8. Frequency measurements. We're at the middle of page 83. There are several possibilities for objective frequency measurements. Electrodes immersed in water and connected to the input of a very sensitive amplifier or signal analyzer can detect an imprinted frequency in the kilohertz region if the water is excited by the frequency. A possible physical mechanism for this is that charges entering coherent water from an electrode must do so as charge pairs. This reduces the number of charges at the water electrode interface, thereby increasing the electrical resistance. The small offset current that flows into an amplifier detects this as a voltage. Garyaev in Moscow has developed a special laser in which two beams are polarized perpendicular to each other. The beams interact with molecular structures which produce optical rotation, resulting in the emission of a radio frequencies. In his experiments with homeopathic potencies, a control solution showed no bio information, while a D12 potency of platinum gave him peaks at 2.2 kilohertz and 4.5 kilohertz. Subsequently, I prepared a D12 potency of platinum and measured by dowsing the three frequencies: 2.301 kilohertz, 4.455 kilohertz, and 2.57 megahertz. The last was obviously his radio frequency, and the others its modulation. I've detected similar resonances imprinted on water using light from an LED. Elia and co-workers in Naples have carried out an extensive study on aqueous solutions subjected to successive dilutions and succussions. The heat of mixing with acids or bases differs between untreated water, dilute solutions, homeopathic potencies, and frequency imprinted water. Although his microcalorimetry can confirm a single frequency imprint, it is at present too slow to measure a whole spectrum of frequencies. Welcome all. Thank you so much for being here. Reading The Healing Power of Water by Dr. Masaru Emoto. We are going through it right now. We are in the third chapter, and we're down right here at the top of page 84. In the far infrared. When working toward a theory for memory effects in water, I looked at my measurements of the chemical hexane. This is a more volatile relative relative of the octane used for gasoline rating. With at least 14 ppm parts per million of water present, hexane gave a chemical frequency signature. Since it only has a spectrum in the far infrared FIR, this was the only region in which water could interact with it. Furthermore, I noted that of the very many water lines in this region, just a few, 28 mm, and 357 centimeters, -1 power, 47 and 213 centimeters to the negative first power, and 78 and 128 centimeters to the negative first power could become coherent enough to use in a water vapor laser. I concluded that these should be able to provide the necessary coherence for water memory and was able to calculate hexane frequency signatures from these spectra. When the same calculation was applied to pairs of these FIR lines in the absence of any hexane, this gave the measured frequencies of water. When a frequency was imprinted onto water, the FIR frequencies were replaced by two sidebands proportional to the imprinted frequency. Because of coherence, this is a fractal effect, and corresponding sidebands appeared in many parts of the electromagnetic spectrum. A theoretical basis for potentization. When water was imprinted and then serially diluted, the original frequency disappeared to be replaced by the frequency multiplied by the dilution ratio. But not all dilution ratios would do this. Some gave no frequencies. This provided a theoretical basis for the potentization of homeopathic remedies, which I demonstrated as follows. Water was imprinted with the complete pattern of frequencies previously determined for thyroxine of potency D15. This was further potentized by conventional serial dilutions and succussions. The frequencies measured for each synthesized potency were exactly the same as those for the potencies prepared from the mother tincture of thyroxine. Yet my synthesized potencies had started from nothing but water. Importantly, there was no discontinuity at potency D24, which is the dilution at which not one molecule of the original substance should remain. Avogadro's number. This is where the chemists have to give up. Shielding and erasure. We're at the middle of page 85. Welcome for reading. Welcome all. It's Heart Love. Thank you so much. We are reading The Healing Power of Water by Dr. Masaru Emoto. One of the great potent books right here of how we understand the electromagnetic field in the body and of water. So this is a very key chapter right here, wherein its clinical and scientific depths, the healing power of water. Shielding and erasure. As already mentioned, it was during attempts to measure frequency imprints in water by instrumentation and in work with electrically hypersensitive patients and with homeopathic potencies that it was found that a potency or a water imprint would be erased if the geomagnetic field was shielded from it briefly with a steel box. Erasure must occur when the thermal energy is able to break up water due to magnetic energy. The water erasure threshold is about 1% of the Earth's magnetic field. The exact numbers imply a domain of phase coherence, 53 in diameter. This threshold is independent of the imprinted frequency over at least the 13 decades from 10 to the negative 4 power hertz to 10 plus to the ninth power hertz. 1 microliter of water, acid or neutral, is needed to take up the imprint of a single frequency. But if the water is alkaline, more is needed. The concentration of coherent domains in random water can be estimated from the number of imprints possible. The pH, the acid or alkali, effect supports the involvement of protons. In 1983, my laboratory showed that living systems can respond to magnetic resonance (NMR) conditions at geomagnetic field strengths. This high sensitivity allows one to speculate that a frequency might be retained in water if the magnetic resonance precession of the protons can be synchronized to any applied frequency, and that they can generate an internal magnetic field that exactly satisfies the proton and MR conditions locally within their coherence domain. This condition turns out to be independent of the frequency to be remembered. Such a process would be stable unless a domain was thermally broken up by reducing the stabilizing geomagnetic field. A 53 diameter domain contains more than enough protons to generate the magnetic field required to satisfy NMR conditions. The statistical fluctuation in the number of protons involved determines the bandwidth of the frequency imprint. This comes to about 1 part in a million, 1 second at 1 megahertz, or 12 days at 1 hertz, and is consistent with the time needed for imprinting a frequency onto water by contact. Very key right here. So we have a chart right here of the change of pH on frequency imprinting. And you see the number of frequencies imprinted up to saturation, and then when it's erased. So I'll show that right here. You see that? We're reading The Healing Power of Water by Dr. Masaru Emoto. And you see this graph right here. We're in chapter 3, showing how the erasure of messages imprinted on water happens. So that's the change of the pH on frequency imprinting. Ice patterns. The ice patterns obtained by Dr. Masaru Emoto are reported to have been taken at magnifications of 100 to 200, where the microscope's field of view would be about 200 to 100 They have a size and symmetry consistent with originating from a segment of the surface of coherence domain about 50 diameter. The size one calculate the size I calculate from the water memory erasure condition. These ice patterns are consistent with being a representation of frequency patterns within a domain. In 1989, we found that water frozen in a static magnetic field showed distinctive ice crystal patterns directed at right angles to the magnetic field. There were also frequency dependent effects from alternating magnetic fields. Therefore, ice crystal patterns nucleated by coherent frequencies within a coherence domain remain at least a possibility. Conclusion. Details relating to the contents of this chapter are to be found in the books I've listed in the bibliography. Finally, I'd like to recall the myth of Achilles and the tortoise, in which the choice of the wrong paradigm precluded the possibility of ever finding a solution to the joint at which Achilles overtook the tortoise. For water, the appropriate paradigm is quantum physics. Ignore it and make progress at tortoise speed. And that concludes chapter 3. We're doing it. Thank you so much. Isn't this so good? Yes, thank you so much for reading with us. Much love and honor. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, that concludes chapter 3, and we will be soon back with chapter 4 of The Healing Power of Water by Dr. Masaru Emoto. Remember, the crystallization is always happening. Highest heart, love, and honor. Thank you for reading with us. Tyron, thank you so much for the donation. Thank you so much for the cash app. Highest heart, love, and honor. Y'all have a wonderful day. Peace.